the most is the social mental constructs, the beliefs that people hold on to. And a lot of people mistake their thoughts. They can't separate their thoughts and emotions and feelings from facts and truth. You know what I mean? And once you get so stuck in your paradigm, so stuck in what you believe to be true, and you don't have an open mind to receive, to change, to grow, you're fixated. This is the truth. This is how it is. And I'm not going to waver from that. Well, then when you limit yourself in that way, you literally limit your connection to the universe.
Welcome back to another transformative episode of Holistic Healing Podcast. I'm your host, Luam. Today, I'm honored and excited to introduce our incredible guest, Steven La Russa. Steven is a certified master spiritual coach whose own journey into spirituality has been deeply profound and transformative. Having navigated an intense spiritual awakening, a powerful dark night of the soul, and even a remarkable shared near-death experience with his wife, Steven brings authentic insight and depth of understanding that is truly inspiring. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Could you describe, well, I guess let's start with your background.
Well, I have, I guess, kind of the typical basic background of most people, working a 9 to 5, married, one son, chasing that American dream and chasing that status and the title and the money and the success, what we think is success or what we've been programmed to believe success is. And, I, like a lot of people, was running on autopilot, just going through the motions of life. And, for me, a lot of times spiritual awakenings, not all the time, but most of the time, they're brought on by situations of crisis, severe crisis. And I was hit with that about 2 years ago. And it was just an incredible awakening, credible transformation, very difficult, very hard, very intense, didn't know what was going on. And that experience brought me to where I am today. So like I said, this is what I've been called to do, what I'm happy to do, to share my experience and to be a light, to help raise the light and the vibration of this world.
I've always been fascinated by near-death experiences. I've looked into a lot of people who've had that, and you mentioned a shared near-death experience. Can you explain that? Do you mean like both you and your wife were in the same experience, or is that separate?
Yeah, we were in the same experience, and it's funny because there's so much to my story, but it was most people, not all the time, but most people go through a near-death experience first that triggers a spiritual awakening, right? That triggers a shift in in consciousness and in their soul elevating, and has them open them up to the spiritual realm and universal laws and principles and see things differently. For me, it was different. I went through my spiritual awakening first, dark night of the soul. So I have to explain this leading up to it first. So I went through all that, brought on by all my crises, losing my job, had some investments in real estate property that were going bad. My wife and I were on the verge of divorce, a lot of problems with my son. And it got to the point where I just broke down. It's like, what the heck am I doing? Why am I doing this? There's got to be more to this. I've been killing myself for 50 some years to achieve this, and it's never enough. We always get that want, get, and then want again to fill those voids of quote unquote happiness and chasing. And I just broke down, and I didn't know what was going on. I was questioning everything. I thought I was on the verge of going crazy. I didn't know if it was a midlife crisis. I felt that I didn't want to be here anymore. Like I just didn't want to do this, and not quite suicidal where I was going to take my life. Just like, this is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to be doing. And that sent me into the dark night of the soul and everything that encompasses. And I went through that for a long time. Now, the point is, when I came out of all this, I realized, okay, this is what I need to do. I want to help people that are going through spiritual awakenings, dark nights of the soul, or maybe just people that, even if they're not going through that intense of a situation, maybe just people that are lost or feel like there's something more, or want to know what their purpose is and feel like, wait a minute, there's something more to this, but I just don't know what it is. And they have that fear of getting out of it. We stay stuck in what we know, and we don't know where to go because there's a fear. So when I came out of it, I was told, this is your calling to help people. So I went and got my certification. I studied quantum physics, Dolores Cannon, Michael Newton, Brian Wise, read, educated myself, took classes on spirituality, got all my certificates and whatnot, all that. And it came to the point where the universe said, okay, all right, Steve, it's time to put yourself out there. And as soon as that happened, and I knew it too, that's when I started to get scared, started to get all those limited feelings. Am I good enough? Who am I to be doing this? Is it good? It's going to be so much work. What are people going to think? All those negative mental constructs, limited thinking, negative thoughts that keeps us trapped and keeps a lot of people from stepping into their path and purpose because they're scared. They're scared of the unknown, unfortunately. So I started reverting. I started reverting back. I reverted back to my old self because I was scared. And that's what triggered my NDE. Because everything that God said to me during the NDE, everything I went through it, I knew exactly why I was going through it. Like most people are like confused. What is this? Why am I going through this? It was, for me, my NDE was a wake-up call. Steve, it's time for you to get out there and do what you were called to do. You're stalling, you're procrastinating. You know what you're supposed to be doing. You've went through your awakening. You went through your dark night of the soul, but I started slipping back. So that basically is what incited my NDE, was basically getting a swift kick in the rear from the universe and from God, that you've been chosen, you've been called, you agreed to do this in this incarnation. This was part of your plan, and you know what you're supposed to be doing. And basically, I got the feeling that basically, if you're not going to do this, if you're not going to fulfill this, then your time is up here. Maybe you don't need to be here. So my spiritual awakening, I had a lot of synchronicities leading up to it. I'm going to get into the NDE experience. My wife and I, she was gone for about a week and a half visiting some family. She was coming back to Carson City where we live. I talked with her on the phone and said, you seem like you're a little down. I need a little spiritual. I know I've been kind of down and this and that. Let's go to Lake Tahoe and let's sit on the beach. Let's meditate. Let's get in tune. Let's try to rejuvenate ourselves. So we on the way up there was something strange in the air. And it wasn't bad strange. It was a weird feeling, a strange vibe. We get there. I'm going to kind of skip over some things. When we're in the room, I'm laying down. I get this intense, severe pain on my left side. I get this numbness and tingling going all up and down my neck, my arm, down the left side of my chest. Now, I've never had a heart attack before, but I've read about the symptoms, and I know I'm familiar with them. And I was like, oh my God, it started getting more intense, more painful. So we were fully awake, that we weren't dreaming, we weren't asleep, we had the TV on, we were talking and everything. I was lying flat on the bed. So I looked at my wife and said, oh my God, I think I'm dying. I'm having a heart attack. And I start to shake, I start to convulse, I start to shake, my left arm starts to shake. Now at this point, when you tell somebody you're having a heart attack and you're dying, you normally expect them to call 911, right? Get on the phone, call 911. But the funny thing about what happened was, my wife said she had a comm come over and she heard a voice tell her to lay down beside me. So I'm kind of like, why is she just laying down? Why is she calling 911? Did she hear what I'm saying? So she lays down beside me and grabs my arm, and our arms are interlocked like this, bent at the elbow, laying flat on the bed like this. So I start, and I haven't, when you go through something like this, you have no concept of time. I don't know how long it lasted. I don't know anything about that. There's no concept. There is no time. And, dealing with these spiritual events. So I start to fade. I start to go through this blackness. I could feel my soul being pulled out of my body very slowly, where I'm in this, one point I'm in this blackness. Next point, I'm in space amongst the stars. And then in the far distance, I'm slowly being pulled towards this white light in the distance. And now mind you, I had been through my spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul. I had researched all this. So I knew exactly what was going on. Like, unlike a lot of people are like, oh my God, what's going on? I know this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I'm dying. As I'm laying there, I hear the voice of God. I heard it 3 times during this NDE. The first time he said, "You've wasted enough time." And to tell you, to hear that coming from the universe, God, you just don't know what kind of feeling it is, because I knew exactly what they meant. As I said earlier, I had been running from my calling. I didn't want to step out into it. And I was procrastinating. I was reverting back to my old self to run from that calling for those reasons I mentioned earlier. So I started praying. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I know I've been wasting time. Give me another chance. Blah, blah, this and that. So I start praying. Now, mind you, this is all in my mind because I can't talk because I'm in so much pain and I'm shaking on the bed. My wife, when we talked about it later on, and we realized what we were doing, we all put it together, is that my wife heard all my prayers. She was able to hear me telepathically. She could hear everything. That is the amazing part, that we weren't talking. We were communicating telepathically. So as I'm begging God, I'm steadily going towards this light. My wife had later told me that I can feel your soul leaving. I could feel your body leaving. I could actually feel some of your pain in my heart also. She was actually feeling, not on the level I was, but she was feeling my pain. So as I'm begging and begging, I'm steadily heading towards the light. It's not working. So there was another point where at that point, I feel like, okay, I'm going to give up. I said, I'm going to stop fighting. I'm going to give into it. So as soon as I thought that to myself, my wife telepathically felt that or heard that thought, and she said, "Steve, fight, fight, fight. Don't give up. Keep fighting." So that kind of gave me a second win. That's when I heard God speak for the second time. And he said, "All this information and all this knowledge that I've given you, and this is what you're doing with it." And I felt so bad. So I get back into begging. I get back into the praying. As I said, nothing is helping. So slowly going towards the light, slowly feeling my soul leave my body. It got to the point again where I said, "Okay, I'm going to give up. I'm going to give up." As I started to give up the second time, I had something come to me, and I said, and I don't even know why I said this. I said, "Wanda, help me," which is of course my wife. Now we'll say this, because after we compared notes, my wife said she only heard God's voice once, and God said to her, "And why should I leave you here?" So I told her, "You're a part of this calling. I may have been chosen, but you have a calling. There is a difference." And she said Jordan, which is our son, and that's the only communication that she ever got from God. So as she's telling me to fight, 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 and I'm about to give up, and I call for her for help, she sits up in the bed and she starts speaking in tongues, what we call light language. Now, we've been married 25 years. I've heard her speak in tongues maybe once or twice, so it's very rare. But when I heard it, it wasn't alarming because I had heard it before, and she's praying in tongues. I'm at this point, I'm calling on Jesus, everything. I'm promising God, I'm going to do give me another chance. It can't end like this. All the things that I say, everything. She's praying, but I'm not really paying attention to her because I'm going through my own. I'm still trying to fight this and trying to hang on as I'm getting closer. And I'm just guessing this. I would say this is a rough guess, but I felt 90% close to the light, like I was on the verge of death, like I was brought to the brink. So as she's speaking in tongues, God says to me, this is the last time he spoke to me. He said, "Stephen, be quiet and listen to your wife." After that, I had a calm come over me. I looked over to my right to her. As soon as I looked over to her, she stopped praying and speaking in tongues, and she started speaking in other languages. She started speaking and chanting in African language. She went from one African language to another, speaking fluently and chanting. Now, we've been married 25 years. The only language we know is English, I can assure you. And she wasn't taking African language speaking classes on the side without my knowledge. So she starts praying and speaking and chanting in these other languages. There were 3 distinct African languages I heard. Then she went from that into Indian, and she started speaking in an Indian language and started chanting and speaking fluently. It wasn't until then that I was brought back. As soon as she started to intercede and pray for me in tongues and was given the gift to speak in light language and other languages, that's when I was brought back. That's when I slowly started to return to my body. And it's funny because I really thought about that. And I told her that you were gone for a week and a half. God could have easily, universe could have easily put that NDE on me while I was by myself because you were out of town. It was purposely meant for you to come back. The first day you came back, I was drawn to go to Tahoe for some reason to get away, and that whole experience was set up for us. And God wanted me to look over at you. He wanted me to confirm. I want you to hear what she's saying and what she's speaking, because I don't want this to be confused for lucid dreaming, outer body experience, your imagination, any of those things. I was purposely told, Stephen, be quiet and listen. So that's my NDE in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it leading up to it, but that's the gist of it right there.
Were you able to understand what she was saying?
No, I had no understanding of what she's saying, but just in hearing other languages, African languages before, I knew it was an African language. I could tell, but to understand what she was saying, no, I can only assume that it was praying, obviously, considering the situation. I'm assuming she was praying because it's praying and chanting. I even asked her afterwards, because when I got up, when it was over with, and I was brought all the way back to my full senses, my spirit returned, I got up, started pacing the floor. I looked over to her, and she was still under the spirit. She was in a daze or a trance. She had that open eyes, like that glaze, like look in her eyes, like she was asleep, but her eyes were wide open, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to say anything to her, bother her. I didn't know what she was going through. I was still just pacing the floor, processing. At this time, I'm getting all these downloads about what we're going to be doing in the future. Things are going to happen. Certain things that you can tell your wife, certain things that I don't want you to tell her because she needs to realize this and come and get this on her own. Just a whole bunch of things. So as she came out of that trance and I started talking to her, I said, do you realize what just happened? Do you know what you just did? And she said, no, what are you talking about? She couldn't remember. And I'm just talking. You just did blah, blah, blah. You just speak another language. She said, hold on a second. Give me a second. She needed a second to gather her thoughts, to calm down, to come back into herself, whatever. And she said, I do remember. It started to come back to me. Well, do you know what you were saying? She had no idea what she was saying. She said, I didn't feel like it was me. I felt like I was the spirit I was taking control of. Obviously, it wasn't me because I'm not capable of doing that. So it's definitely the spirit. So yeah, that was quite an experience.
I know you've had a spiritual awakening before that, but did this experience change your perception of reality?
It didn't change my perspective of reality or anything, because you know what, that wasn't the purpose. The purpose of this for me was, Steve, get over those limited thoughts, limited feelings, mental constructs, fear of being judged, fear of being accepted, fear of wanting validation from others, fear of not being enough, fear that you're not enough, and realize this is what you're supposed to be doing. That NDE for me was a validation that the universe is on your side. You're always supported, like we all are, in our mission and purpose. There's nothing special about me. But I needed that to get over that hump of doubt and that limited thinking that was keeping me trapped and I wasn't moving forward and fully stepping into it. That was the purpose of the NDE. And I tell people this, and I've said it before, I know God loves me. God is light. God is love. But, sometimes God, the universe, will give you the swift kick that you need. And that's what this was about. I almost attribute it to a father walking in the room with a belt and giving you some tough love. Okay, this is for your own good. I love you, but you need this. That's how I kind of felt that was. And I thank the universe for it, because I needed that to get over that hump. And obviously the universe knew that I needed that experience, because if it wasn't for that experience, I may have stayed trapped in that limited thinking and not have stepped into this calling fully.
You've mentioned being telepathically connected to your wife. Was it only during the NDE experience, or did you experience that afterwards?
You know what? We haven't experienced it after. It was only during that NDE. It wasn't before. There wasn't anything before. Hasn't been anything since. We've kind of tried it. I was told by God that it'll be opened up at the right time. That now's not the time for us to be using it. And I don't know what that means. I
Mhm.
wasn't giving any detail, but I trusted that it will come back in time, but this is not the right time. I kind of have an ideal of why, because of certain situations, that we're dealing with right now, that or we're currently trying to change our living situation. And I think once we do that, and that's going to free us up, because to be honest, we're around some negative energies right now that are kind of hampering us. You know what I mean? That I've
Mhm.
been working on dealing with. When you're an empath and when you're called and chosen, and you may know this, you have a lot of rough experiences with your family. You know what I mean? I have a
Mhm.
lot of narcissists in my family. I have a lot of energy vampires. And, right now we're in the process of getting our own place, because we just moved to Carson not too long ago. We're in a transition. And,
Mhm.
you know, I know that that will be reopened to us in time, but now is not the time for it.
Yeah. In my experience, I had to remove a lot of things, a lot of
Yes.
negative people,
Right.
traumas, all of these things. And I felt my telepathic abilities get stronger.
They will.
And I've
Yep.
been trying to figure out like why I'm not connected to everyone,
Hmm.
just some people. So I've been
Right.
trying to figure out, okay, why am I connected to some people and not others? There
Hmm.
must be a reason. I must be called to help some of these people. But I also noticed with telepathic communication, it's like it happens the more I'm also an empath, so
Hmm.
I absorb naturally,
Yes.
but I realized it makes sense because usually I can receive that communication when there's a lot of emotion behind what somebody's thinking.
Right.
And it makes sense because emotions are energy emotion. So
Yes.
it projects that thought or feeling a lot faster through the ethers or whatever. And I'm able to hear, see, and feel. But it developed over time. And then all it was I had to get rid of a lot of baggage.
Yeah. Yeah. That getting rid of the baggage of the negative people, negative situations, learning, and all the time. Sometimes you can't get away from, certain people at their jobs, certain family you have to deal with temporarily, maybe because you live with them or this and that. You're in a situation. At least learning how to perceive them and deal with them differently until you can break away from them, because like you said, you know everybody's not ready, and there's certain people that you can communicate with telepathically, and there's others you can't. You wonder why, and you know what, just accept it. The ones that you're meant to help, that you're meant to communicate with, that you're meant to raise the light and the vibration of, the universe will lead you to the people that are ready to receive you, ready to hear you, and want that help, and want to evolve, want to grow, and want to elevate their level of consciousness. So yeah, for me, being an empath, especially when I was going through this, I had to get over that need and urge. Oh my God, this is so great. This is so beautiful. This is so enlightening, which it is. Everybody needs to know this. Everybody needs to hear this. But everybody's not ready for it. And I was told, sit back, put yourself out there, follow your divine inspiration, your divine guidance, and release the rest. Release the rest. Put yourself out there. People that you're meant to help you or help. Some people are not ready to wake up yet, and they may not be ready in this lifetime, and that's okay. And some people have to experience their path and purpose and go through things where we look at people like, why do they keep going through that? Why don't they get that? Well, there's a reason for it. They have to experience. They haven't learned how to transcend it. They haven't learned how to change their perspective on it to be able to get out of that loop. So we have to realize that, as beautiful as it is, and as much as we want to help, we can drain our own energy trying to help people that aren't ready, and that's a detriment to us.
Yeah, that was the hardest part
Yeah.
is wanting to help everyone, wanting to
Right.
wake up everyone, and you realize that can actually backfire if they're
Mhm.
not ready. So everybody has to
Yes.
come at it in their own time.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
In your experience working with people in your coaching, what are like the common things you feel like gets in the way of them experiencing spiritual growth?
Well, the main things are the mental, social constructs. There's so many things. I mean, when I really start to delve into this, there's so many things to it, but the most is the social mental constructs, the beliefs that people hold on to, and mistaking. A lot of people mistake their thoughts. They can't separate their thoughts and emotions and feelings from facts and truth. You know what I mean? And once you get so stuck in your paradigm, so stuck in what you believe to be true, and you don't have an open mind to receive, to change, to grow. You're fixated. This is the truth. This is how it is, and I'm not going to waver from that. Well, then, when you limit yourself in that way, you literally limit your connection to the universe. You put out a blocking energy where you're not able to receive. You get stuck in all these low vibrational thoughts and feelings that affect your spiritual connection and growth that you don't realize. But what I'm seeing is judgment's a big thing. Judgment and expectations. One, the judgment, people judging, and I get this from my clients all the time. Oh, I'm dealing with this person, and they're an a-hole, and they're this, and they're mean, and they're narcissists, and they're this and that. Okay, maybe they are, and you're seeing it like that. But when you place that judgment on them and you give them those earthly labels, which may be true, you have to realize the reason why they are like that is because they're on a lower level of spiritual evolution than you are. And that's okay. You have to start changing your perspective of thinking from worldly, logical ways and morality and placing labels and judgments on people to changing to a spiritual, universal perspective when you see someone. Like a child. Let me give you an example. If there's a child in third grade and there's one in 10th grade, you don't down the one in the third grade because they're not on a 10th grade level. That's where they are, and that's okay. They'll eventually get to that level. But when understanding that third grade person or the person is a third grade level of spiritual evolution, I'll equate it like that, intertwine the two, they can't understand 10th grade concepts, right? 10th grade work, 10th grade principles. So when you stop the judging, because all those low, limited thoughts, feelings, emotions block your spiritual connection. You have to look at people that's their path and purpose, what they're doing, they have to go through for whatever reason, for their soul evolution. That may not be something I would choose or works for me, and that's okay. But when you start throwing judgments and labels on people, that's a big thing. Another thing is expectations. It's a funny thing with expectations. People will put expectations on others because, and it's very simple. I'm going to call somebody up and ask them to help me move, or ask them to borrow $5, or ask them, for a favor, or whatever it may be. But think about this. When you do that, you call them up, we immediately put our expectations on them. You know what? It shouldn't be a problem, him coming to help me move or giving me $5. I would do it for him. So now you've created this expectation in your mind because that's what you would do. You place that on them, and you've told yourself that's right. This is the right way to react to what I'm about to say because I would do it for you, or that's how I would handle it. So what people don't realize is that when you come to this person and ask them, and they don't give you the answer or the response that you want, or that you think you should be getting, or that you would give, you place that on them. Now that expectation can spiral. And I told people, listen to this. Now it spirals because they didn't want to come to help you move or let you borrow the money or whatever the case is, and you would have done it for them. So now you've conceived that as being right, which it's not right. That's just your choice. Don't put that on them. So now that expectation is turned into anger. Now you're angry at them. Now you're resentful because they didn't line up to your expectations. So one low vibrational feeling or emotion can snowball into others, and people don't see that. So think about it. So you get mad at this person, you hang up the phone, you hold on to that, and then an hour later you try to go meditate or do a sound bath, and you've got all that negative energy, limited thoughts, limited feelings that you're not dealing with. And I try to tell people, it's like we're like a car. When you go get your oil change, what do they do first? They drain the old oil. They don't put new oil on top of that old oil. People have to drain that old oil, because people come to me all the time. I'm doing sound baths, I'm earthing, I'm meditating, but I don't feel the connection. I said, you don't feel the connection because you're not doing the shadow work. You're not dealing with the things that may be obvious, or some things that aren't obvious. I have to bring to people's attention that they didn't think about, little things like expectations. All of those things play a part in blocking or hindering your spiritual connection. And with people, you have to be self-aware of it. You have to be able to analyze yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. Because I always tell people, you can fool other people, you can fool yourself, but that vibration, you cannot fool the universe. You can't. So those are just some of the things that people that block and hinder people's spiritual connection that some people are in tune with, and some people don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like non-judgment and giving people grace are the two
Yes.
things that are very important for spiritual growth. Because even for me, when I delve deep into understanding what narcissism is,
Mm.
a lot of people
Yeah.
villainize narcissism, which is
Right.
really a spectrum, and we can all have narcissistic traits,
Yep.
but they look at empath as a good thing. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, I think they're both imbalances.
Right.
They stem from the same thing, right? From
Mm-hmm.
childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And then one person decided, to go one way, to go the selfish route and forget everybody type of thing. And then another person was like, I don't want anybody to feel like this. So they go into
Right.
the empath route. But I
Right.
think they're both imbalances. I think the answer is usually in the middle. Like
Mm-hmm.
narcissist is selfish and they know how to get their needs met. Empath is usually too selfless and doesn't know how to get their needs met because they're too selfless. And I
Right.
think both are imbalances. So in this way, you can look at it from a non-judgmental
Mm-hmm.
way.
Right. I tell people that also these things, these traits that we see in people, narcissistic behavior, envy, jealousy, manipulation, lying, all those things people do. The heart of it and the root at it is the soul, is where their soul is. I tell my clients, but they're this, and this. I said, yes, on a worldly level, how we judge people and how we look at people, and we attach these labels, narcissistic, liar, manipulative, whatever okay, great. They are that from a worldly level. But look deeper. It's a spiritual issue that's causing this manifestation, these negative
Mhm.
manifestations. It's where they're at spiritually. And I tell people, so we if you think of it, when we think it in those terms, you got to be careful because that affects your vibration. Because when you start getting angry and judging and of a person that's like that, you start dragging your vibration and frequency down, and that affects your spiritual growth and connection. So what a better way to handle it is say, okay, all right, you know what, I'm having these feelings, acknowledge them, turn them around, transmute them, transmute the lens that you're looking and perceiving things from a worldly way to a spiritual way. That protects you. It protects your vibration. That protects your frequency. And if you truly want to be connected, in tune, and grow spiritually, and receive, another thing, why am I not receiving from the universe? I don't receive the messages, the synchronicities, the divine downloads, because those things are blocking. That they're anti-universe, they're anti-spiritual. They go against the concepts. So when I see somebody like that, I have to remind myself first, even when I do get into those thoughts, those negative thoughts, judgment and whatnot, because they still happen. We're still human. But what
Yeah.
you'll notice is, I tell people, as you grow and evolve, they'll start to dissipate. They will start to dissipate. You have to look at that person. Okay, you know what? Even if you've tried to help them, you can only try to help somebody to a certain extent. You have to realize you have to release them, because they have to go through that. They're going through their path and purpose. That's what they have to learn. That's something they have to transmute. That's something they have to overcome. They have to transcend. Don't take that personal, and respect their path, respect their journey. If you've done something, if it's a close family member and you've done some stuff to help, you can do what you can do to help. But then you realize, okay, you know what? This is something they have to go through. I'm not meant to help them. I have to step away from it, because now it's affecting my energy. It's affecting my vibration and frequency, and I can't do that. So you have to choose what lens you want to perceive things from. And there's only two choices. You know what I mean? There's only two choices and how to perceive that. And I tell people, you have to do the shadow work. You can't skip that and bury all these things and think that they don't matter, or that's just a little thing and that's not really affecting me. Stop telling yourself that stuff, because that's part of the trick to keep you trapped in in your worldly self, in your ego, and not to have you evolve. That's part of the ego's trap. Oh, it's not a big deal. That doesn't matter. That's not affecting me. And you become comfortable with it, but then you go and try to connect and you're not getting it. And that's something that people really don't face and don't realize, and they trivialize it. They think it's small. They'll look at the big things, but you got to look at those little things also.
Because all of that is part of your healing. Even
Part
if
of your
you
healing, man.
went through some stuff with people, and you're holding on to all of that baggage, at the end
Right,
of the day, you're not gonna get past to where you want to go spiritually
right.
until you learn to forgive those people. And in order to forgive, you have to understand where everybody's coming from.
Yeah, you have to
Um,
understand. You have to,
yeah.
and we have a choice. And what people have gotten caught into is this automatic programming, this automatic response, these social constructs of how we're supposed to react to things. You know, when something happens, we automatically, whatever it is, when a situation or event happens, we automatically get sad. Okay, that happened. I have to be sad. This happened. I'm automatically angry. This happened. I'm automatically jealous or whatever. We've been so programmed that when certain things come up, we react. We don't respond. We don't take us. People have to realize, take your power back. You don't have to be angry because that happened. You don't have to automatically be sad. You don't have to automatically be jealous or any of those sad or any of those low vibrational thoughts or feelings. Stop telling yourself that you have to react that way, because you don't. You have a choice in how you perceive and how you react. And people have gotten caught up in these automatic responses and automatic reactions. And when you do that, you're automatically lowering your vibration, you're lowering your frequency, you're hurting your spiritual connection. So realize, when a situation does happen, take some deep breaths, ask yourself why it's happening, ask yourself how you feel, get in contact with it, and it's okay. I'm not saying you can't have those feelings. It's not about not having those feelings anymore. It's about transmuting them. It's about changing them. It's about not having them take hold and take root and become who we are, because that's not who we are. That's a false sense of who we are. That's who society's created us to be. You have the choice of how you perceive and how you react to things. And you don't have to do it the way society tells you, the way your mother and father did it, the way your friends do it, the way you see it in a movie. And that's part of the thing that people have to realize.
How do you transmute negative energies? What are some ways?
I transmute negative energies once by my perspective, understanding what they are. If you understand what they are and where they come from, because negative energies, the whole key to negative energies, obviously, is what? To get you to react negative, to take over you, to lower your vibration. That's the point of it. Is that narcissist, that person that's acting that way, who's disrespecting you, whatever they're doing, that's a spiritual battle. So what you have to do first is one, don't fall into the trap of what we talked about, perceiving them in a worldly way. Because when you perceive them in a worldly way, like I said, you put those labels on it and you start judging and you start lowering your body and getting angry and blah, blah, blah. And you start picking up on that energy. When you start looking at them, because it instantly works for me, I get a calm. When I instantly look at that spiritual level, that's where they are, that's their path and purpose. That's something that they need to overcome. That's something they need to transmute. And I stay, that helps me stay in my higher vibration. What that does to that person, one, it'll either soften them up a little bit, or two, they won't want to be around you because they can't get that reaction that they want to get. You know what I mean? They want to draw you into their muck, into their misery, into their. So by the perspective of understanding what it is, understanding the purpose of it, and understanding truly where it comes from, and keeping your mind in that spiritual sense and perception, if you do that, it has no choice but to either transmute, or even better yet, flee from you and leave you alone. You know what I mean? Or because it sees it cannot get that power over you. It doesn't get that reaction over you. They're not getting that argument that they want, that drama that they want. So, but like I said, you fall into the worldly way of perceiving it, you're gonna fall into worldly emotions again. You're gonna get trapped in it with them.
I found Another way to transmute is to do something that you love, whether it's a hobby or
Hmm.
something that gives you purpose, that
Yes,
calms you down, whether it's
always,
hiking or art or music or gardening
always.
or anything
Oh
like
yeah,
that to
oh yeah,
take your mind
yeah, yeah.
off
That's
of
that.
that situation.
Yes, yes. When they're out of your presence and you're done with them, initially dealing with it, then of course you need that time definitely to go refresh, to recharge, and to, how should I say, shake off that uck. You know, and you're an empath. You're like me. I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my gut. When I walk in a
Yeah.
room, I just feel, oh, I could. You feel everything. That's what an empath is. I could feel. I walk past people and I hold the door open for somebody, and I'll just start. I'll take a few steps and start crying. I don't even know why, because I feel
Yeah.
their energy. I feel their pain, and so definitely staying connected, staying grounded for an empath is vital. And for anybody, even when you're dealing with someone like that, you have to rejuvenate your energy. But initially, while it's going on, until you get to that second step, first and foremost, you need to know how to handle it and perceive it.
Yeah. I think another thing with empaths is like learning how to discern, knowing your energy and learning how to discern what's other people's energy versus yours.
Yes,
Because sometimes
separating.
you don't realize you're absorbing other people's energy. Um, and it takes some time before you start discerning between yours and other people's energy.
Yeah, it that was difficult for me during my dark night of the soul, where I was spent, just in the bed in the fetal position, crying and trying to take my mind off things, trying to watch some spiritual videos, and they're trying to find out what's going on and watching stuff. I would just start, like I said earlier, picking up on these people's energy, feeling sad, feeling angry, breaking down, crying, feeling jealous for no reason or envious for no reason. This is not me. I was like, why am I feeling like this? It was so confusing, and it was so tough to deal with. And I had to do a lot of self education. I mean, like most people do. There's not a lot of people out there that do this, and and here's a big thing: one, have genuine and true intentions and good motives behind what they're doing. You know what I mean? That can help you, that want to help people. And for me, it was learning, like you said, to differentiate my emotions, separate mine from theirs, how to combat it, how to keep it away. And that was very scary time for me, and it's very, very emotional, and it's not easy to do. And for empaths, I didn't even know what an empath was. Obviously, I had no idea. I couldn't put a name on it, couldn't put a title. I just thought, like most people, when they go through, you're going crazy. You know what I mean? Or you're having a mental breakdown. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do. I actually, at one point, we don't know what to do. What do? We run back to what we know. I actually ran back because, like, brought up in a Christian background. I ran back to the church and tried to explain to them what was going on. And it was so funny. They had no idea. You know, unfortunately, most of them are not connected. They don't know. And I was like, they just, they tell you, well, just pray and just, call on Jesus. Everything will be fine. Don't get me wrong. I love Jesus. I believe in his teachings, and he had a great message, and one of the highest evolved people ever in the history of the world. But it's not that simple. I wish it was. If it was that simple, then that would be great. But it's not that simple. There's a lot. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of shadow work. There's a lot of realization. There's a lot of you coming into really recognizing and acknowledging and admitting who you are and what you do, to be able to change it, to be able to transcend it, to be able to move into a spiritual level. It's not just sitting there and waiting on Jesus. It's not that simple. And I went there and I got no relief. I got no solitude, and I didn't know what to do. And, there's a lot of people that have gone and are going through things like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest things that empaths have to learn is self-love and boundaries.
Boundaries was a major thing. I let so many people walk over me, and I went all out because I felt like that's what I had to do. That I'm here to help people, so I got to do everything for everybody. And I realized, no, you don't, and you can't. And I went to the stage where I felt guilty about it. I couldn't let go of it. I couldn't say no. But then after a while, and you may have gone through this also, you feel so drained. You feel so tired.
Mhm.
You feel so unstable emotionally because you've taken on all these burdens, all these people's feelings, emotions, all their problems, all their everything, and you don't say no to anybody. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You don't want to let anybody down. If I'm here to help if I'm here to help people, I got to help everybody, and all that stuff. And so yeah, learning boundaries, learning to say no, learning to go with my true authentic self, because I would feel this. I would feel in my gut, no, don't deal with that person. You shouldn't be doing that for whatever reason. And I would still go against it. I would still fight it. Say, no, I got to help him. I got to help him. I wasn't in tune. I wasn't in tune fully spiritually to realize that boundaries is an important part of being an empath, important part of being spiritual. Because if I don't set boundaries with the people that I can't help and that I'm not meant to help, I'm not going to be there for the people that I'm supposed to help.
Yeah. Yeah, that energy. It's like there's been times where I'm in a group of people and my energy would just get drained and I'm like, I gotta go home, and I go home and isolate, and all of a sudden I am completely recharged.
Right.
And after so many times that happens, I realize, oh, okay, energetically I'm being drained,
Yes.
by being around lower vibrational people. And so I need to
Right.
make sure I isolate and recharge.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. That's an important part. That to get that isolation, to recharge, to reconnect, and to get for me to get your divine downloads, to get the answers you need, to get the answers you need to question. You need to be in that solitude. You need to be in that quiet to be able to connect. You need to be amongst nature. You need to be away from the crowd, away from the noise, away from all the things that blocks and hinders that to be able to receive. Definitely.
Yeah. You mentioned the dark night of the soul, and for people who are not spiritual, what does that mean? What did yours look like, and what did you gain from it?
Well, the dark night of the soul is a process of the spiritual awakening that you go through when you're questioning everything that you are. You're questioning everything that is. It's a battle, the true battle between the ego self trying to hold on and your true spiritual higher self trying to bring you to where you need to be and to who you truly are. And that struggle not to let go, that struggle to hold on to who you were, to that ego, that strife, that it's a time filled with confusion, that that you're not supposed to be doing this, that there's more. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to go. There's depression, there's sadness, there's anger, there's all these different emotions that are tied up into the dark night of the soul while you go through this spiritual battle of transformation. And and I tell people that are going through it or that are in the beginning stages of it, explain to them first what it is, because if you know what it is, you're a lot better equipped to deal with it. Not saying it'll be easy, but it'll be easier to know this is it. I also tell people that are going through it or about to go through it is that you have to be willing to allow the universe to close those doors. Everybody loves when the universe opens doors for us. And here's a new opportunity. It's great. And it's, oh my God, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But when the universe starts closing doors, when you go through this, when it closes doors to friends that you used to have, family members, to what ways you used to live, things you used to do, music you used to listen to, people you used to hang around, all that stuff is going to change. And you're going through it and you feel it. And you don't, initially you don't want to let it go because that's all you know. There's fear in letting it go. But what I tell people, that's a time to be more excited about what's to come instead of mourning what's going. Because it's a purge that you're going through. You have to go through a spiritual purge of getting all of that out, of releasing all of that and letting it go, so that your true self, your higher self, your spirit can take over. And it's hard when you've been doing something for 30, 40, 50 years, however long you are, to let go. It has such a hold on you where you're ingrained in it, where you're intertwined with it, where you really believe who you are is what you do, or your place in the family, or what society tells you to be. You're conditioned from that from birth. And it's so hard to break away from those things. So when you start having those questions and doubts, that's the beginning of it. That's the great thing. A lot of people, and that's another thing about doubt. I've had a lot of people say, well, you know what? I don't like, I'd start doubting things. And that is doubting is a sign of spiritual growth. Once you start doubting, when you start doubting things, if you don't doubt things, you stay stuck in them. How can you grow from it? If you believe that this, that, or what you've been taught is an absolute truth, how do you grow? You can never believe anything is an absolute truth. Never believe anything is absolutely reality or absolutely true. Because once you do that, you limit your growth. You're saying that's it. I don't need to learn or evolve past that. You always stay open to being unlimited, to being, you don't accept the truth in reality because there is no reality. There is no truth. The only truth is the moral standards we place on it. We place moral standards on good and bad, what's right or wrong, what's pretty and what's ugly. The universe doesn't do that. So you have to let all that stuff go. And basically, that's a part of the major purging process of the dark night of the soul.
Yeah, I think it's understanding your new life is going to cost you your old one.
Yeah.
And rejection is protection.
Yes. Oh my God. It's so hard. Like I said, I told people, the universe is going to close some doors. And the more open you are to closure, the quicker you're going to evolve spiritually. I have a client I was dealing with where she's starting to evolve, and I could see the progression. And she said, "You know what? A friend of mine, for some reason, stopped calling. We don't talk anymore. I don't understand." I said, "That's part of the universe moving that person out. You got to understand." So before you start taking it personal, what did I do? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with her? You start getting mad at her because she didn't call. You got to be careful of that trap of letting that drag you down. For whatever reason, sometimes it's revealed to you, sometimes it's not. The universe will close doors. I've had doors in my life closed that I truly understand. I understand that needs to be closed. I understand. There's some other doors that were closed. I'm like, I don't understand that. But I understand it's for my greater and higher good. So I don't fight it. I trust that the universe knows a little bit more than me. And if the universe took that person or that job or that situation out of my life, there was something about it that I didn't see, that didn't align with my path or purpose. Basically, that's it. There was maybe that person you thought was nice and your friend was talking about you behind your back and had ulterior motives. Who knows why? But you have to, because I see so many people fighting these doors, fighting these closed, staying in relationships longer than they should. And because they're caught up in labels. Oh, that's my mother. I can't leave her. I can't stop dealing with. That's my brother. No, yet those titles don't matter. Those are worldly titles that we place on people. You have to let those go and realize the universe may try to take some people out of your life. And the quicker you are and the more receptive you are to letting the universe close that door and being excited about what's to come, because the universe is going to bring people in your life that resonate with your higher vibration, your higher frequency, and align you with people that are on your level or higher to support you in where you're going. But the universe can't do that if you're holding on to those closed. You got your foot in the door when the universe is trying to close it.
Yeah. And it becomes hard when it's family or your relationship. And spiritually, I think families, you come into the families that you do to learn the lessons that you need to learn.
Right.
I think we decide to come into certain families to learn. And the real goal is to find your soul family. And for some people, that might be their actual family, but
you're right. That's
a
right.
lot of times it's different.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. And that's what I've dealt with my family. I've realized that I've done a lot of research on this, and I realize, and I'm sure you may have heard this or know about this, when you're chosen to do something, you experience a lot of trauma in your family, and especially your nuclear family. A lot of trauma. I have a lot of liars, manipulators, narcissists, their lower level evolved spiritually. And it's everybody that's close to me. It's my mother. It's my father. It's my brother. And I've endured so much trauma and crises dealing with each of them. And, I didn't forgive. I spent 20 years I didn't talk to my mother. I spent 10 years never talked to my father. No communication with either one of them because of the things that they did. I held on to that anger and I held on to that unforgiveness. So through my spiritual awakening, I realized I had to forgive them. I had to let it go, because unforgiveness, all that does is prolong your suffering. All you're doing is prolonging your suffering. And then forgiveness is not about forgiving them of the act they did and just in saying it's okay. It's about releasing the hold that unforgiveness, the anger and the suffering that holds you to, that keeps you bound. And so I had to forgive them. And I told myself exactly what I said earlier. You know what? I know that I'm being put through this because of my higher calling. They have lessons to learn. We're learning from each other. So I've told people this. I've looked at every relationship I've had and tried to get the lesson out of it. Go back. That's another thing people do. People perceive things as bad and horrible and no good, and they sweep it. They don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it anymore. So that lingering feelings are still there. You're still going to repeat those. You're going to stay in the loop of repeating those similar situations because you haven't transcended that lesson. And I tell people, you have to look at those things that happen and stop putting those labels on them, even though they may feel hard and terrible and, there was nothing to gain out of it. Stop looking at it like that, because then what happens is, one, you're not getting the message, you're not transcending, and you're gonna keep repeating that lesson until you get it, so you can move on and evolve. And two, every time you think about that person or that situation, it's going to bring up those negative thoughts, and you're reliving it all again. You're bringing down your frequency and your vibration by reliving it. You have to look at those situations as for what they are, not how we look at them and put labels on them, and through our perception and our lens, through a spiritual lens. This was a lesson that I need to learn. What lesson did I need to learn out of this? How do I need to react differently now to stop this loop, to transcend it? Because if you keep reacting to that person that's making you angry, whatever, with cussing them out or doing the same thing or ignoring them or whatever, that hasn't worked, that hasn't transcended, that situation hasn't been resolved, you need to look at that differently and change your perspective of it to be able to transcend it. You have to. There's a lesson to be learned out of it. Let me stop looking at it in the negative light and look at it as a lesson. Receive the lesson. Okay, this is why I had to do this. Receive it, embrace it, and accept it. Because then, now, if you know that, when you deal with that person or that situation next time in a different way, under that new perspective, you're able to transcend it, and you'll notice it'll stop. Why do I keep getting these certain kind of women in my life and certain kind of men and these bad relationships and all that stuff? It's because you haven't transcended it. You haven't gotten the lesson out of it. Once you do, you change your perspective, you'll start changing your reality and getting that lesson to be able to move forward and ascend spiritually.
Yeah, the universe is going to teach you one way or another.
Yeah.
That's when you get into those cycles of, oh, I had to learn that within myself. Like,
That's right.
okay, when I go back and reflect on every relationship I've had, okay, I saw similarities and I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
Like, as long as I don't learn this lesson, the universe going to keep putting me with the same type of person so I can learn that
Yep.
lesson. And
That's
until
right.
you do that, that's why I'm a big proponent of, if you break up with someone or you get divorced, the best thing you can do is heal whatever you need to heal, or else you're going to attract whatever that you need to fix
Right.
instead
That's
of
right.
getting your higher level partner, you would get someone that you need to heal from. So
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's all about perspective. That's the biggest thing that I've learned in spirituality and concepts and events is your perspective. And it goes along with everything. Even throughout history, if spiritual events, spiritual concepts, if you're looking at them through a worldly lens, a worldly view, you're not gonna get them. You're gonna misinterpret them. You're not gonna understand their full meaning. You're not gonna get what the message is out of it. So if you start lining yourself up with different perspective and a spiritual way of thinking, you'll be able to discern spiritual concepts, spiritual theories, spiritual events. And I hate to say it, but throughout history, there's so many things that have been passed on in religion that have been written and everything. And I tell people, what you're reading has either been written mostly for two reasons. One, it was written by someone who misconstrued the spiritual message because they probably weren't in tune and weren't connected, or two, they misconstrued the spiritual message on purpose because their plan was to hide it, to keep us from our power, to keep us enslaved, or whatever reason. So what I tell people is that you have to be in that frame of mind, in that realm of thinking, so that when you're reading, even when you're reading stuff, because I remember I read a lot of stuff and I had that worldly view. I wasn't evolved. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand it. I came back and read a lot of that same stuff after my spiritual awakening, Dark Night of the Soul, NDE, and it made perfect sense. There was clarity. There was a revelation of what this meant. It was simple to understand. It was simple to process because you've evolved to a higher level. You've changed what lens are you looking at this from, and how are you looking at it? And that's what I tell people is that you have to start there with your perspective. You can light your incense, you can get your crystals, you can practice yoga, you can meditate. All that is great, and I do all of it. All of it's a great way to connect, and it's necessary. But if you're doing all that and you're still looking at it through a limited lens, holding on to negative feelings, limited ways of thoughts, social and mental constructs, those spiritual practices are going to be very limited in how they help you until you change your perspective first.
And going back to the whole religion thing, I don't think religion itself is a problem. It's the current state of our modern religion and religious text and organized religion, because there's actually a lot of spiritual stuff in the old Bibles that have been taken out, like the Book of Thomas and all these other things.
Book of Enoch and Book of the 12 Disciples, a lot. That's right.
And these were very empowering things. It's just the problem now is that a lot of that has been taken out. And so the current state of religion can be hindering and limiting.
Yes, I consider myself omnis. I find truth and good in all the religions, in every one that I've studied. But to me, the biggest problem with religion, the biggest problem is that it has conditioned people and programmed people into believing that they're not good enough. There's the big, for what I've seen with religion, here's the biggest problem. I mean, people talk about religion. They talk about the pastor taking money and them doing this and doing that. Okay, no. The biggest problem with religion is not the money they're taking from you. The biggest problem with religion is the power they've taken from you. Because what they've done is they've convinced people and programmed people to have them believe that they need a middleman, a pastor, a preacher, a clergyman. They need an institution. They need to run to this institution for a connection to source, for a connection to God. And they've convinced people that you're not good enough by yourself. You need this man, you need this woman, you need this institution for your connection to God. Because so what they basically told you subconsciously is this person, this institution, these people or whatever are on a higher level than you. They have a connection to God or source that you're not capable of. So you got to run to them and run to the pastor and pray to him and go sit in that building for connection. That's the biggest thing that is done. And you get people, and this is just the truth. You go and you sit in a confession box and confess your sins from this man for him to go to God on your behalf to forgive you of your quote unquote sins. They've taken the power away, and people have to realize is that you have the power to connect because we're all from God. We're all from source. We're all equal. Yes, we are on different levels spiritually, and some people have a better connection than others, not because that they're better or the universe loves them more. It's just because they're more in tune. Yeah, they put into work. So you have that connection. So religion, that's why when Jesus, for example, his real name is Yeshua, when he went in there and started flipping over tables and basically told the Pharisees, you guys are full of it. He was telling them, you guys are not teaching people true higher consciousness, how to connect with their higher self, with source, how to evolve spiritually. You guys are teaching them to worship you and put their faith in you. And you guys are not it. You guys are not even connected. You guys don't even get it. And that's what Jesus was teaching. And it's a shame with Yeshua that his teachings were misconstrued, that everybody thinks he came to be worshiped, that he came to create followers, that he came to create a religion. He came to create higher consciousness. He came to create, to let people know that you have the power to connect. You are from source. You are from God. Luke 17:21 says, the kingdom of God is within you, not out there in the clouds or some man in the clouds. It's within you. He also, I don't know the verse, but he also said, you could do greater things than me. Basically, you know what? You guys can do all these things that I can do. I'm not above you. I'm trying to help you get in tune and elevate and raise your consciousness to that, to understand that. Even when he was on the cross famously, and he said, forgive them, Lord, because they know not what they do. Basically, forgive them because they're on a lower level of consciousness. They don't even realize what they're doing to me. And we're all one, that they're doing to themselves. Because what you're doing to me, you're doing to yourself, really. And they don't even get that. So it's a shame that the disciples and the people of that day misconstrued his message and worshiped him because of all of his miracles and all of his deeds and because of his higher connection that they thought they couldn't achieve. And that wasn't his goal. That wasn't his mission. But that's what happens. That's what I said earlier. That's what happens when we perceive things through a worldly lens, a man-made, egotistical way of thinking. If they were in the spirit and they were attuned, they would have saw that. You know what I mean? And that would have been passed down. So there's a lot to it. There's so much to it.
Even if you read the way he was against creating a church.
Yeah.
He wanted that your personal connection with
right.
God and source. And that's the whole idea of Christ consciousness, right?
Yep.
It's like the idea of he was just trying to show you the way to achieve your own, ascension, awakening, whatever you want to call it.
Right, exactly. And it's a shame that some of those books, Book of Enoch, Timothy, Book of the 12 Disciples, that all those things, that they sat down literally at a table in a meeting room, literally like a big business, and went through everything and decided what we had the right to know and what we didn't have the right to know. You know what I mean? What fit their agenda? No, we got to leave this out because we can't. What we can't have them do is realizing that they have their own power. Because guess what? If everybody realized they have their power, there's no need for institutions and pastors and churches.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but that's a touchy subject. I'm still learning how to, when I run into people that have that feeling of how to approach because they're so entrenched in it and they're so submerged in it. You know what I mean? I just try to, I consider myself a spark. Well, what if this? Did you ever think about that? Because they know the truth inside. Their higher self knows the truth. We all know the truth, right? It's in there somewhere. But that you could be the spark to maybe get them to think about things differently. Not to argue, not to you're wrong and wag your finger at that. Just to to be loving, to be kind, to respect their point of view, and realize I was once there also, so I totally understand where you're coming from because I was there. But what do you think about this? What if he came to do this? And what do you think about this verse where it says this, that the kingdom of God is within us? And try to just be a spark to try to and leave it at that. Leave them alone. And if it's meant for them to awaken or come into it, that's fine. But those days of chasing people and begging people and feeling obligated, no, you're only obligated to help who you're meant to help.
You've talked about shadow. You mentioned shadow work a few times. What does that mean to you? What does that look like?
Well, the shadow work is just really laying it all on the table. Everything, consciously, unconsciously, things that you've tried to hide, things that you've tried to tell yourself that are okay, things that you've tried to convince yourself don't matter. Any little thing and putting it all on the table. And first of all, is owning up to it. If you can't acknowledge it and you're not self-aware, you have to be self-aware of it all. And you can't even do shadow work until you're self-aware and you admit it. You have to come to terms with it. You know what? As hard as it may be, if you really want change, you really want growth, you really want true connection, you really want evolution of soul, you have to come in tune and have a serious talk with yourself and admit all those things, those dirty little things, secrets, thoughts, feelings, emotions. You know what? I am envious of my best friend. I am jealous of my brother. I do resent my father for this or that. You know what I mean? And it's not okay. And come to terms with everything. And now do the work to transmute that, those negative thoughts, negative vibrations, negative energies, to come out of that. And how do you come? And like I'm going to say, this is one of my big points: to do the shadow work, to be self-aware of it, to admit it, to acknowledge it, to recognize it, to stop making excuses for it, and realize and come to terms with it. Then transmuting it by changing your perception of it, changing your perspective of those situations, of that. I told one of my clients, you're jealous, and a lot of people do this. A lot of people see people do things, and I did it also. I did it with real estate. That was one of the causes of my awakening. People will see people do stuff, and they jump into it. Oh my God, that worked for them. They're successful at it. They're making good money at it. Let me do this. Let me try this. So they get into it, not being in tune, not being in touch, not knowing who they really are and what their true path and purpose is. They get into it. I'll use my example. You get into real estate because you saw your buddies doing it or your cousin doing it. He's making big money, and it doesn't work out for you, right? You lose money. Things fall apart. What do? What do a lot of people do? They get jealous. They get resentful. How come it worked for them? Why is it work? Why are they better than me? How come they were able to make it work and make this money and be successful? You start getting down on yourself, all this kind of stuff. So how do you transmute that? And how do you come out of that? I tell people, you have to realize something. You're doing something that's not meant for you. That's not within your path or purpose. That may be a part of their alignment, their path, their purpose, their mission, and it's worked out for them. But you're jumping into things because you're not even self-aware of who you are. You don't even know your identity. You're not even in touch. You got to get in touch with yourself. You got to find out, get in communication to find out what your path is, what your purpose is, what your passion is, and do that. But for you, I told a client of mine, think about this. For you to be jealous of somebody else because they succeeded at something and you tried it and you didn't, no, you transmute that. You say, okay, you know what? That wasn't my path. That wasn't my purpose. God bless them. That's something that's worked out for them. Let me get in tune. Let me do the shadow work. Let me do the cleansing. Let me get spiritually aligned. Let me get connected so I can find out my path and purpose and what I'm supposed to do instead of being jealous of somebody else and what they're doing. And now spiraling into one negative emotion to another. Now you're jealous of them. Now you're angry at them. Now you're mad at yourself because you feel like you're not good enough. And it's just a nasty cycle, a bad loop.
Thank you, Steven, for that lovely conversation and all the insight. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with?
Well, I just want to tell people that are having doubts, are having questions, are feeling unfulfilled, feeling that there's something more, wanting to know their path and purpose. Just, maybe there's some doors that are being closed that you're trying to keep open, is let go of the fear. The universe has something better for you. That's all part of the process if you're going through that. You're not going crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're beginning or starting a purge. And it all starts with the doubt. It starts with the questions. It starts with that little feeling, I should be doing more. I know there is more. Hold on to that. Find yourself a good spiritual coach, a spiritual mentor, maybe somebody who's been through it, someone who could understand, could help you, guide you through it, not to give you the answers. Spiritual coach, spiritual mentors, they're not to give you the answers to anything. They don't know your path or purpose. They don't know that. They're there for support, for guidance, to help you do some shadow work, help you get rid of those negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions that are hindering you, social, mental constructs, religious dogma, and to help you realize, to get over that fear of losing, that fear of, be more excited for what's to come and more alive and passionate about what the universe is going to bring you. Because I promise, if you let those doors close, you follow that instinct, you follow that intuition that you've been given from the universe, and you work on that and you embrace it, things will open up for you quicker and faster than fighting it and denying it and trying to hold on to those old vibrations, people, situations, jobs, relationships that are not meant for you and are hindering your growth in your spiritual, connection.
Yep. Thank you, Stephen, for all your insight and for coming on the podcast. And for the
Yes.
listeners, I'll have all his information in the description. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.